Tech Revision with Mrs. Swanee Pooh. Hi everyone, this is a video about quality control, something that's very important not only in your NEA but also is something that can come up in the GCSE D&T paper. So what is quality control? Quality control refers to checks that are carried out by workers in the factory, the people that are actually making the product during its stages of its manufacture, so as the product is being made all the way through, and also at the end once it's completed. So you may have heard of quality control and also quality assurance. Quality control happens during the product's manufacture, so when it's being made, and quality assurance happens actually before the product starts to be made. It's making sure, it's assuring that you have the correct equipment, your workers are trained correctly, and all those different types of things. So quality control is more about checks that happen during the actual making of the product. And these checks could be really simple things like, has the product been cut out to the correct size? Is it within tolerance? And tolerance is something that we're going to talk about in a second and something that could also come up in the exam. It could be that making sure that parts are positioned correctly if it's like an assembly. So quality control checks made throughout the manufacturing process. So here's a bit of an example here. There's a bit of an example of something like a thread on a nut or a bolt being chucked. Chucked? What does chuck mean? Sorry, being checked. So it could be that when the thread, which is the kind of curly bit on a screw or on a bolt, once it's been made on the lathe, you can see that they might have something like a little gauge that the quality control person in charge of quality control would just use that, push it up against the side of the thread, and that would ensure, if it fits perfectly, it means the thread on the bolt has been cut correctly. If it didn't fit, you would know that that did not meet quality control standards and that product would be discarded. If it kept happening on multiple products, it means there's a flaw in the making, in either the machine or the way the person is making the product, and that would need to be looked at. So here we go. On the top of this bolt, there's going to be a slot cut into it because you need to be able to get your screwdriver or tool into it. So it uses something called a milling machine, but it's pretty much like a big pillar drill. And you can see the worker use the machine, and then we've got a depth gauge here that's being used to check that that little slot is deep enough, and that's a really quick, easy check to do on that product. Then you've got things like visual check. So you can see that this is the body of a guitar here, and the worker is polishing up the edge of the product on something called a bench polisher, and then the control quality check is it just being visually checked. Does it look fine? Are all the edges well finished? Are there any cracks or dents or scratches? So that's the visual check there. And at the end of this product being made, if it was a guitar, it might be that it's tested. Someone plays it. Does it sound correct? Can it be tuned correctly? Does it hold the tuning? So that is like a sound check on that product. So there are some examples of different types of checks that could be done throughout the manufacture of a couple of different things. Now, we spoke about tolerance really quickly. Tolerance is an acceptable margin of error in manufacturing. So it's normally shown as a plus or minus measurement in millimeters. So for example, a hole could be plus or minus 5 millimeters. That's quite a big tolerance. It would mean that the hole could either be 5 millimeters bigger or 5 millimeters smaller, and it would be within tolerance. If it was any bigger, say it was 6 millimeters bigger or even 5.1 millimeters bigger, it would not be within tolerance, and that means that the product would have to be remade. So tolerances are very important, especially for the types of products that might fit together. So for example, a bottle cap for a bottle, the tolerance would be quite small on that product because it needs to be able to screw accurately onto the top of the bottle. And if it's a couple of millimeters out, it's not going to fit together. So a tolerance is an acceptable margin of error in manufacturing. Now, you might be asked to give some examples of things that can be used to check the quality of products. So the first thing that you could put down is something called a GoNoGo fixture. So this little device, and you can see there's one on the left hand side, there's a couple on the left hand side. The one on the bottom left is probably the easiest one to understand. Say you were checking the size of a hole, and you can see that one side of the gauge is green and says go, and the other side of the gauge is red and says no go. So what you would do as the quality control person in charge of checking that product is you would grab the product, you would place the no-go gauge, the go side, into the hole, and it should go in. Okay, it should go into the hole. You spin the gauge around, and on this side it should not go in. So that would mean that it's within a certain range. If it went in, if the no-go went in, it means that the hole size is out of tolerance. Okay, so it makes it a lot quicker because you don't have to, for example, get out a measuring tool like a vernier caliper or a metal rule. You don't need to do that. You've got something that's really, really quick and easy to use because you can just quickly place it in the hole, and it very quickly shows you that it's not within tolerance. So it gets rid of something called human error, and it makes the process a lot quicker. So, for example, the part below needs to measure, so this is a little bit more about tolerance here. The part below needs to measure 250 millimeters by 150 millimeters and has a tolerance of plus or minus 1 millimeter. Really, really easy. What is the maximum size and what is the minimum size? Have a think about that. I'm going to tell you the answer pretty much now, so pause if you don't want to hear the answer. But the maximum size the component could be is 251 millimeters by 151 millimeters, because it can be plus or minus 1 millimeter. The minimum size is 249 millimeters by 149 millimeters. So you can see it's a really simple process, kind of idea, but it's really, really important in manufacturing that products are made within tolerance, and things called GoNoGo fixtures allow you to check tolerances very, very quickly. So there we go, there's the answer to that question. The other thing that you can use to check tolerances is something called a depth stop. And, well, not to check tolerances, but to make sure that something is drilled to the correct depth. You can put these little plastic stoppers on drill bits, and that physically stops you being able to drill in any deeper. So it's called a depth stop. It stops the drill bit going too far into the material, and it actually eradicates the need for someone to actually check the hole afterwards. So it controls the depth of the holes, it ensures that holes are drilled to the correct depth without the need to check. This results in more accurate products and also quicker manufacturing times, because you don't have to stop and check the hole because it's already been drilled to the correct depth using one of these stops. So it saves a bit of money, as you don't need to employ a quality control officer to check the hole. So to control quality on products, you could be asked this in the exam. A couple of the things that you could talk about are go, no-go fixtures, and you could also talk about something called a depth stop. Right, here's some questions for you. The part should measure 55 millimeters. The tolerance is plus 2 millimeters. Plus or minus, sorry, 2 millimeters. Which of these are in tolerance? The second question, the part should measure 547 millimeters. The tolerance is plus or minus 0.5 millimeters. Which of these are in tolerance? So this is a very classic question that could come up in that multiple choice section of the exam. Here's the answers. So those two are actually within tolerance, because one is only 1 millimeter away and one is 1.5 mil. And these ones here, 546.5 millimeters, because it is only 0.5 of a mil smaller, and 547.2 because it's only 0.2 of a mil bigger. Hope that makes sense. It's not as complicated as it seems. It's relatively simple. Just remember, quality control, checks made throughout the manufacturing stages. Some different ways of controlling quality are using GoNoGo gauges and using depth stops to make sure that holes are drilled to the correct depth. And you're trying to make sure that products are made within tolerance, which is an acceptable range of error in manufacturing, normally measured in a plus or minus. I hope that was helpful. See you on the next one.